Both this Congress and last Congress, I introduced Separation of Powers Restoration Act, or SOPRA, which would displace precedent established in Chevron, the case you're talking about, NRDC. And as you know, in this case, Supreme Court required judicial deference to government agency interpretations of ambiguous statutes. This bill, I believe, would tip the scale back in favor of listening to what Congress has to say in its statutes rather than how an agency interprets them. Ms. Ho, what's your interpretation of the Chevron precedent? And do you believe it's worthwhile for Congress to try and reclaim some of its power that for years has gone to the executive branch through agency interpretation of statutes and regulations?
Thank you. Let me begin with the last part of your question. I certainly agree that it's critical in our system of checks and balances and separation of powers for Congress, for this body, to exert its lawful authority as the maker of laws in our land. As to Chevron, and somewhat relatedly, I think, one thing that is interesting about that case is even though as it has come to be sort of a decision involving administrative agencies, that decision nowhere cites the Administrative Procedure Act. So I think a decision that sort of sets forth this notion of deference is entirely outside the bounds of what this court set out, which some have referred to as the Constitution of the administrative state, the Administrative Procedure Act. That decision nowhere cites or even engages with what this court set into law in the Administrative Procedure Act.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Chair, I also wanted to just spotlight an example of the politicization that's occurring at the Biden administration's FTC right now that you're well aware of. Last week it was reported that Fight Corporate Monopolies, a 501c4 arm of the American Economic Liberties Project, intended to air attack ads on primetime TV against myself and you, the chairman of this subcommittee, and other colleagues. In fact, this organization hired a mobile billboard truck to drive through my district due to my opposition to the FTC non-compete rule that we've been discussing today. Certain groups coming after members of Congress with misleading information isn't particularly new, but I was disturbed to learn that Ms. Sarah Miller, the executive director of the very group I just mentioned, as of Monday, is now working for Chairwoman Khan as a senior advisor and is likely to work on the very issue she attacked us on just last week. So, I mean, you couldn't ask for a more current and better example of what's going on at the Biden administration's FTC. And with that, I will yield the balance of my time to Mr. Bishop.